We're live. Hello,
Hello.
look. It's just Ellie and myself tonight. Amy is off gallivanting and somewhere else. So, yeah, it's just us two, and we are talking about back-to-back labour tonight. So I suppose we should start with what is back-to-back labour?
Start there. I can hear your kittens. They're really loud.
They are. They've got a jingly ball. I'll try and get it off them if they come.
So
So
why did we feel like this needed a separate video to normal labour?
So back-to-back labour can look and feel very different from um, labour when your baby is the other way around. So back-to-back position is when your baby's head down, but the back of their head is and back is against your spine. And it's quite common. I think I've read that it's from anywhere from 1 in 10 to 30% of babies are in this position by the time labour starts. So it is very much a variation of normal. But yeah, it can look a lot different. It can feel a lot different. And I think medical professionals can treat it a lot differently as well. It's often treated more like a medical event, more like a medical emergency. And I think you and I come at it from the perspective of it's just a variation of normal. Both as doulas, and I've had a back to back labour as well. So we have that kind of personal experience as well. Why else do we want a separate video specifically around this, Ellie?
I'd have to refer to my notes.
um, I think the other thing we said was that comfort measures might be more of a priority. Sometimes when a woman's baby is back to back, that as we said, it does and can feel different, and often that is more intense, sometimes painful. So thinking more about what comfort measures you might use and how you can use those and how your support team can use those too. So yeah. So what does it feel like? Is there anyone watching who has had a back-to-back labour, who kind of has experienced that? What are your experiences as a doula, Ellie, of supporting a woman whose baby you suspected to be back to back?
Sometimes it's one of those things that only becomes apparent afterwards. It only makes sense after the baby's been born, and you look back at the labour and you go, "Ah, okay," because it looks so different to a labour where the baby is in a different position. It can be really hard to gauge where the woman's at. Not that it's always necessary to gauge for anybody really to gauge where a woman's at. It's just about her being comfortable. But first and foremost, I think it's harder to get comfortable when the baby is back to back, for obvious reasons, bone against bone. Um, but also because sometimes it looks like progress and it looks like, oh my goodness, the baby's nearly here. But actually, you're right at the start, but then all of a sudden you're back at the other place. I know that birth generally isn't linear, it's not a straight line just from A to B. But especially with back to back labours, it just seems like um, repetitive, I guess, without any kind of gradual building. Sometimes it goes from I'll walk into a birth space and I think, oh, the baby's coming any minute, and then I feel like maybe she's going to ask me to go because she doesn't even feel like she's in labour. So it can be more difficult, I'm sure, to go through, and also more difficult to support because you haven't got the encouragement of it necessarily building and getting stronger in this kind of way that appears more meaningful and probably feels more meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a woman's baby is back to back, it can mean a lot of things as far as what labour looks like. It can mean that the woman has a much longer early labour phase, and as you were saying, Ellie, it takes a long time to get into that. The baby's nearly here, because the surges aren't regular, so it might feel really intense early on, but you're still, as you said, early on in labour. And also a longer pushing stage as well, that because of the position that your baby's in, there isn't as much pressure on the cervix. So it can take a long time for that to dilate, but then your baby isn't in the ideal position to move through the birth canal as well, for when you're pushing your baby out. Um, yeah, I think something that I often hear as well is sensations in more unexpected areas of the body. So a lot of birth education, when it talks about what contractions feel like, what surges feel like, it's about your bump and about your bump being hard and about that tightening and squeezing. And actually, in a back-to-back labour, those sensations can be felt in different parts of your body. So I've heard women describe it, feeling it in their back a lot, or in their bum. So feeling a lot of pressure very early on when it isn't actually because the baby's head is there. It is just because of the position that the baby's in, and in their legs as well. I don't know if that is your experience from supporting women in those who are giving birth to back-to-back babies.
Yeah, and I guess firstly, by the time the babies are born, they're not always back to back, because a back to back labour can, I'm not going to say resolve, because that means that it's never going to fix, but it can, the baby can get into the most ideal position for birth. And I would say that that is the work of labour. I mean, how many times we hear women say, "Oh, I'm no, I'm not going to go off on a tangent there," but labour is the work of bringing your baby into the ideal position most of the time and moving your baby down and out. So it doesn't mean anything if the baby hasn't done some of that work before labour starts, because that is the work of labour. I know that
Absolutely.
was a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah,
Um,
so true.
one difference I've noticed with back to back labours is that the woman isn't able to go to, maybe she doesn't need to, but she doesn't tend to go into labourland, into that place that women go to when it seems like they're on another planet when they're having their babies. The women that I've supported who've had back to back babies have always appeared very, very lucid, and needed a lot of reassurance because of that, because she's not just coming out of a surge and saying this kind of like random babbly wonderful labourlandy thing. Even if she's looking up and she's saying, oh, you know, I think I'm going to die or whatever, she'll go into that surge and it'll be gone. By the time she comes back, that's not there anymore. But I find that women having back to back labours are still very, very lucid and are asking very specific questions, and are often very frustrated, understandably. And sometimes, in my experience, the relief that usually comes between surges when the baby is in an ideal position doesn't necessarily come when the baby's back to back.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that lack of relief feeds into the kind of heightened emotions that you kind of just described of, um, yeah, being very lucid and I think a lot more self-doubt. I think we've spoken in the transitions video that sometimes in a back-to-back labour, it can seem like that woman is going through transition again and again because it's really hard to get into that flow when your labour doesn't have this trajectory that you've been told it would have, that your surges aren't getting closer together and more intense, that actually they're feeling really intense. And as you said before, you know, they suddenly tail off, or you have half an hour and you haven't had a surge, or when one comes, it's you feel like it's a surge that's never going to end, and then the next one is 20 seconds long. And when it doesn't have that rhythm to it, it's so hard to lean into that and to surrender to the process, because the process is something that doesn't really make sense anymore. It's not what you expected it would be. And I imagine that can be quite scary when you thought that labour was going to be one thing and it is something entirely different altogether. So we've kind of spoken a little bit about what it feels like. What do you make of attempts to turn a baby who is back to back?
Me personally,
Just, yeah, thoughts.
okay, my thoughts would be that it's not something that needs fixing. So, I mean, the baby could have its own wise baby reasons to be the position that they're in. And I wonder what we're communicating to our babies when we say, "You're wrong," before you even come out. You're wrong. But that being said, we live in ways that our bodies haven't yet accustomed to. So it's possible that there can be differences in alignment in our bodies and differences in but well, both of us. So sometimes I think it's great to give the babies opportunity to move if they want. Because also then it's not just about your baby's feelings, it's about how you feel about your body and the confidence. And if one of the first things you do in your step towards birth is to try and fix something, then that could undermine your confidence, and you could just you can go into it with a mindset of, okay, so you're the way around that you want to be, and my body will birth you no matter which way around you are, because we're going to work together and this is all going to be fine. I don't know. I think for me, it's just about mindset.
I really liked what you said then about giving your baby the opportunity to be in a more, head down, facing the right way position, because I think maybe we should talk a little bit about the different things that people try to turn their babies, because some of them are about just creating the conditions and giving your baby that opportunity, whereas others are physical, hands-on. It happens in hospital with the medical professionals. So, and those things are very different then, aren't they? That one is creating the conditions, one is more, I suppose, forcing your baby, trying to anyway, into what we perceive to be the ideal position for birth. So I know that spinning babies is a very commonly recommended resource, where it's kind of physical exercises, really, isn't it? That you get into like inverted positions so that you create a hammock for your baby. Because your baby's back is the heaviest part of their body. So if you're working with gravity and doing inversions every day, that you're giving your baby the opportunity for gravity to help them to move around. I did that every day for weeks, and it didn't help. Was
Were
it?
they positions that you wanted to be in?
I don't know. I think there was a lot of. I was very caught up in what I should be doing with my first baby. So, I mean, I'm not sure I would ever like want to kind of hang upside down off my sofa as a like regular, yeah, self-care thing. I remember, I mean, when I was pregnant, feeling dizzy was quite common for me. It was one of the first signs that I knew that I was pregnant. So, like, being upside down didn't really help with that.
You don't do very well being this way up.
No.
Some of these people that I know, I can't imagine you just being upside down.
No, like the feeling of like the blood rushing to my head was not fun. But then maybe if it was a position that I found more comfortable and more cool to be in, rather than, sorry about the cat. Yeah, if it was a position that I felt more cool to be in. Hang on a minute. Oh, I feel so mean.
It's the right thing to do.
It's coming for me. If it was a position that I felt more cool to be in, then maybe the outcome would have been different. So what are the other things that women try to turn their babies?
Mark's question. Are the things on the notes that we took earlier, are they to do with moving a baby from back to back to front?
I can't remember. I think there are just things about moving your baby into the ideal position, I guess. I suppose a lot of them are more about helping your baby to be head down. But something that you mentioned was about visualization, and I think it's so underestimated, isn't it, as being that it's very powerful, and that if through visualization and communicating with your baby, I think the results can be unexpected for people who are skeptical of that kind of stuff.
And what are the side effects if you've spent time
Exactly.
talking to the baby?
Yeah, it's only positive, isn't it? But I've seen women who've had pictures of the position that they want their baby to be in on the walls. They visualize it. They listen to specific meditations that help them to imagine what position their baby's in. And belly mapping can be really good for stuff like that as well. Just kind of, yeah, just really connecting with your baby and your bump and getting a sense of where they are, and then communicating with them about what position you would ideally like them to be in. Yeah. But I think the most important thing is that back to back is not treated as a problem that needs to be fixed. That it is a variation of normal. So I think this is something that we always say, but as a woman, if you feel okay and you trust that your baby's okay, then you both are okay. And that goes for their position as well, that if you feel comfortable, if you feel like they're in a good position, even if it's not the best position, that's okay. That you don't have to try and kind of make yourself and your baby fit into this box of ideal. It's okay to just go with it.
If you do have those feelings, though, it is interesting to look at them.
The feelings of
the thing that you just said that I've already forgotten.
Wanting to like fit into a box of normal. Yeah, for sure. Because if you keep pushing them down, like when you're in your thinking brain and you're pregnant and you can go about your day-to-day life, then like that's fine. You've got everything that you need to keep the vault securely closed. But when you are in labor, you don't have that control anymore, and that stuff starts coming out of the vault that you thought was like well locked away. And that's the kind of thing that's going to come up. So look at it, acknowledge it, and process it so that when you go into labor, you can just surrender and not kind of have things that popping up surprising you, and yeah, becoming a barrier to having the birth that you want. So what kind of things can help if you do want to, either if you want to kind of encourage your baby to get into a better position, or just helping to manage in a labour when the baby is back to back, both for the woman but also those supporting her. So what kind of things have you kind of brought to a birth when it's been a back-to-back labour?
I guess without a doubt the most important thing is to talk about it beforehand, because if the woman has done lots of preparation about even just hypnobirthing and stuff, then she'll be prepared for a certain kind of birth, and it can be extremely jarring when it doesn't feel anything like you expected. Whereas if it's something that you've talked about as a possibility, even if all the way through your pregnancy your baby's been front to back, I suppose that's more of a shock then when all of a sudden labour hasn't started gradually. It started all of a sudden. It is, you're not able to find comfort in your mind or your body, and you're searching, and you're feeling a little bit lost. Like if you've already talked about that in pregnancy, like it seems it seems that there might be some signs that your baby is back to back. Do you remember when we talked about that? Then you can kind of go to plan B. And it's not that you would support her any differently, but just to acknowledge that you might be in. If it's something that you've gone over, it's something you can refer to. But it's very hard for a woman to hear that in labour if she's never considered it before. Or your baby might be back to back. This labour might be different. Like she's got nothing to refer to. So yeah, that will be the number one thing that I bring to a birth is stuff that I would do before a birth.
I mean, I think that's so true. I think we always say, don't we, that the bulk of the work that we do as doulas, and the bulk of the work that happens within the the doula client relationship is not at the birth. It is way before that. It is the work that we do together through those antenatal sessions, and yeah, back to back is a huge part of that. Not because we're trying to I don't know, prepare women for the worst. But if you don't have that education and that knowledge, then you're not going to be able to, you're not going to be well resourced if that is the birth that you have. I think something else that's so important in a back-to-back birth is patience. There aren't, I think, a lot of things that are considered issues in birth are just a lack of patience, and so many of those issues resolve with time. And I think this is one of them. That yes, the labour might be longer. Yes, the labour might be harder, but babies get born, babies come out, and with patience and being supportive, that the woman can absolutely do it and get through it.
What did you need during yours? And I know yours is super long as well.
Yeah, super long. I think my early labour was kind of from like late Friday night to mid-morning on the Monday, and they were very intense surges, and sometimes they were every 2 to 3 minutes, and strong and lasting a long time, and then there would be nothing for half an hour, and it was incredibly frustrating. I think looking back, one of the things that I wish I hadn't done was rushing to call my midwife, because I think that was inviting them into my birth space too early was a really big barrier for me, as far as the self-doubt that kind of creeped in and became quite overwhelming, really. So I think I called the midwives on Saturday for the first time. They came out again on the Sunday, and then they came the Monday morning, and then they came back the Monday afternoon when he was born. So, and each one of those times I accepted a vaginal examination to see where I was, and of course my cervix wasn't dilating, and that information wasn't helpful for me, because even though my cervix wasn't dilating, it didn't mean that my body wasn't making progress, that I wasn't working towards that, the birth of my baby. But I very much felt like my body's broken and I can't do this, and will I have to go to hospital, and what will happen if I go to hospital, and just really spiraling. And that happened quite a few times. I think that's what we were kind of talking about before with having lots of sort of transition moments. So not rushing for medical help and not wanting to have vaginal examinations, because if I hadn't had those, then I wouldn't have been so concerned about the lack of progress. And I think I was quite lucky with the midwives I had, that they didn't jump to the failure to progress. We need to start intervening. I think there are a lot of midwives out there who would have done that. So patience.
Did they tell you at any point they thought your baby was back to back?
No. And I'm not sure
to hear or not.
Sometimes I'm like, I wish they told me, and then I could have done something. But would I have done anything? Probably not. I wish I could have done something. At times it felt horrible. It felt really painful. It felt I was exhausted. But sometimes that's what birth looks like, and that's okay. That if I had a better support team around me, if I had a supportive partner, if I had, a doula there or a supportive friend, that my experience of that might have been very different. But yes, it would have still been painful. Yes, it would have been hard, but I would have felt held and cared for and loved. And I think those things are really important when labour feels hard. I wish I'd had someone to give me counter pressure on my back. I think that would have helped me to feel a little bit more comfortable. That pressure in your lower back before your baby has actually really descended can feel really intense. And counter pressure, I know for women that we've supported, has given them some relief really from that intensity, even if it's just short-lived. What else? I know that using a rebozo can be kind of helpful for comfort reasons, and also to try and help your baby to get into a slightly better position. Have you used a rebozo at birth, or how would you use one? Or
Yeah, I suppose when the woman is on all fours and you create a cradle with the rebozo, that can just feel just really super nice at any point in pregnancy. I've only done it in pregnancy, not in birth, but that is a nice one. I think I had that as well myself. I remember how good it felt.
Yeah, I
It's a good
think.
one for creating space.
Sorry, say that again. It was good for creating space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anything that physically helps the woman to feel more supported. I think that feeling of like breaking open that happens in birth happens more in a back-to-back labour. So like helping a woman to feel physically supported when that's happening can be so helpful.
And that's why, counter pressure is good. And we're not just talking, a gentle touch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, home pressure.
The more pressure, the more grounded it helps the woman to feel, and then the more free she feels to actually follow her own body because she's fine.
Got a question. Should I pop it up?
Oh yeah, please.
The power. How did you manage energy levels? A mixture of things. I also was very sick throughout my labour, so I wasn't really keeping food down very well. I did have some energy drinks that I tried to drink, and just eating when I felt like when I felt like I wanted to, eating what I could, but not worrying too much about it. So I remember grapes was I had like a punnet of fresh grapes, and that was like little bits of heaven every time I ate one until I barfed. So yeah, that was really nice.
Again.
Yeah, and just resting as much as I could. So there were some parts of my labour when I was like, I need to get things going. I was like going out for a walk while all the fireworks were going off and pacing up and down the garden. And I lived in a basement flat at the time, and there were some stairs going down to the flat. So I was like walking up and down the stairs. But when I recognised that the end was not in sight, just like lying down, and even though I couldn't sleep, trusting that lying, and even if it was just for moments at a time, like that was giving me the energy that I needed. But it was tiring. I think labour often is, and even more so when it's a long labour and a hard labour, but reminding myself that it was not going to be more than I could handle because it was my body, and in that sense I was in control. Even though I wasn't consciously in control, it was my body. So I knew that what was happening wasn't going to push me beyond what I could physically, like my physical capacity, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then when labour shifted, so there was a moment within my labour when things suddenly shifted and felt very different, and I wonder whether that was the moment that he turned around. And it was when my waters broke spontaneously, and at that moment, like my energy levels were so different. Like I suddenly felt really energized and like I could do it. And from then on, it looked very different. So I think managing energy levels can look different for every woman, but I would say always coming back to that what is going on in your body is not going to exceed your capacity as a woman. You are the most powerful thing in the universe. So yeah, there's nothing that your body's going to do that you can't handle. Other things that can help, or what to expect, I suppose. I think like expecting, I think this goes back to what you were saying about the woman being quite lucid, but asking a lot of questions, like asking, and questions that you won't necessarily have the answer to. So like, why is it like this? why is this happening to me? Why is it so hard? Why isn't my labor progressing how I thought it would? Yeah, but how would you kind of meet that as a birth partner or a doula?
It's difficult because most of the time women are not very lucid in labour, and you can give the same answer confidently, and you know that she's not going to remember, and she's going to be so grateful every single time that you tell her that she can do it. But then women are so lucid in a back to back labour. I think, is she going to slap me if I say that again? And I think, am I overthinking this? So I admit I do find it a lot more difficult to be at a back to back labour because I think last week we were talking about reading a woman's body language and being in the flow with her and kind of being able to anticipate her needs. And the back to back labour, I find that really, really hard because the woman's not in labour land.
Yeah,
She doesn't necessarily feel connected with her body in the same way. There isn't this flow that she's just going along with and part of and picked up in this kind of stream. She's
yeah.
standing there asking you why is the baby not come yet?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'll just be honest, I just find that hard.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say? What do you do? Teach me.
No, I think I also find it hard because I think the confusion that often comes with a back-to-back labour for the woman in that she's confused as to what's going on in her body. I don't think that I think that's often felt by everybody in the birth space, even when you're someone who's been to lots of births as a doula, that yeah, that confusion can be a little bit contagious, can't it? And because as humans we're programmed to look for answers. And I think it's when this is why I kind of come back to actually there isn't an answer here, that it is just patience and trust that the process works, um trust that your body works, trust that your body can birth. um yeah, we
If
have
it's
it.
not emergency, then patience and time is going to resolve it.
Yeah,
Sarah
this,
says this is a variation of normal from Laurie with such a helpful response to the why questions. Yep,
yeah. And if I'm
definitely.
ever at someone's birth, that is something that comes out of my mouth a lot. Like, yeah, this is a variation of normal. um but yeah, I definitely sometimes think, is she gonna get really pissed off at me saying this again? um Sometimes you do, it is just about saying the same thing, because that is the thing that's true, that what is going on in a woman's body is a variation of normal, and it's not something that needs to be pathologized and worried about or fixed. There's so much about just standing back and allowing it to happen, um, even if what's happening is hard. um, I think sometimes as well there's like a sense of unfairness, um, because in so much birth education we do talk about labour land, and we talk about how it can feel orgasmic and it can feel amazing, and how women lean into that and it's the most amazing experience of their lives and they can't wait to do it again. And that isn't necessarily what it feels like when your baby's back to back. There can be that sense of, I just want this to be over, I just want this baby to be here safely and for this pain to stop. And with that I think comes, yeah, like, this is unfair, this is like, this doesn't this shouldn't be like this.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah.
Especially when the woman feels like she's done everything right. She's been to the chiropractor, she's been doing yoga, she's mentally and physically prepared, and now there's this thing.
Yeah. And when we talk about surrendering in labour, I think surrendering into those feelings as well is so important. Otherwise, you're just going to get stuck on them. Like, lean into that feeling of, this is fucking horrible and it's not fair, and grieving for the birth that you thought you were going to have but aren't having. Because as soon as you lean into those feelings, you can move through them. Um, and yeah, come out of the other side feeling like, yeah, this is hard, but I'm hard too, and I can do this, and I'm strong and I'm powerful. Yeah. I think what we were saying about it's variation of normal, but also just I think women who having a back-to-back labour often need more encouragement or want more encouragement. So often we talk about not engaging with a woman verbally, not offering that like constant reassurance and encouragement. But I think when labour feels really hard, that can be really helpful, and to kind of feel seen, to feel that someone sees you, they see that you're having a hard time, but they still believe in you. I think that can be really powerful too.
Yeah.
When you've like found yourself at a birth where you thought the baby was back to back, have you ever just found yourself going, I just need to sit and be with this woman. There's nothing that I can say or do. I just need to be here.
I think that was the first time I texted you to say, I get now why doulas call it bearing witness. Like, I know that some doulas don't even call themselves doulas, they call themselves like witnesses. And I just thought that just sounds too passive. And that was that woman who I texted you about, because I was there for a million years. I probably sent you 1,000 texts.
Yeah.
I don't text at birth, everyone. I'm talking sneaky one.
Yeah.
That was the first time I got it. That I really got what it was just to witness a birth, because it's always going through your head like, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? Like it always is. But there, at this birth, there was literally nothing else that I could do other than witness her agony and her strength. Because afterwards, she's only going to remember the fun bits, and she's going to remember her cute little baby. Like those are the memories that's going to stand out. But she knows that I witnessed what she went through. She will always know that. That's not going to get buried under the happy memories or the hazy memories. It happened, and I will always remember it. I was a witness to that part of her.
Yeah, and I know that woman afterwards didn't go like at the postnatal, why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you try and fix that for me? She just felt held and supported, even though you weren't doing anything. And I guess that goes right back to when we talk about the core, like part of our role, it isn't about doing, it's about being with a woman. And I think we've said this before, haven't we, about birth partners, that the most important thing that you can do at a birth is nothing, to just be present and with the woman.
Which is much, much harder when the woman is saying, yeah, what can you do to fix this situation?
Yeah. Yeah, and I imagine even harder when it is, I mean, obviously we care about our clients and we feel connected to them and the women that we work with, but we're not in like a romantic relationship with them, or, it's not as close as someone who's chosen to spend the rest of your life with you. That must be so hard to witness someone who you care about so deeply be in pain and be in agony. But it's still important in that situation to, take it back and be like, remember that actually in doing nothing, it is doing something. And it's a protective factor as well, isn't it? Doing nothing is protecting the process of birth. Have another couple of comments. I think that what I said before about women being the most powerful thing in the universe. We absolutely are. And I've got another comment from Violet. Did you have a more distinctive sense of transition before your body started bearing down and you knew this was it? Your baby was coming. Is there some kind of build up? I think this, certainly my own experience was that everything, that it just felt very intense throughout. It didn't feel like a build. It didn't feel like this steady trajectory up a hill where things got more and more intense. I remember it was actually a point where I'd near enough given up. I decided that if nothing progresses in the next hour, then I'm going to hospital. I'm getting the diamorphine. I wasn't even, because I wasn't dilated, I wouldn't have even been admitted to the labour ward, but I was willing to go to hospital and sit in triage just to get some pain relief and just to get some sleep. And in that hour, I rested and I lay down, and yeah, something really shifted then. As I said before, my waters went spontaneously, and it is hard to know because time is so distorted as a woman as when you're the woman in labour, but it felt like within minutes I felt that urge to bear down, and I was like ripping off my clothes to get in the birth pool. Um, so no, there wasn't any kind of sense of build up or like warning. Um, but that didn't feel scary. It gave me like the burst of energy that I needed. Um, all of a sudden I could feel this sensation. I didn't really know what it was at first, and then I realized that I was kind of bearing down uncontrollably. And I instinctively felt down and felt his head inside, and like all of that was just like amazing, and yeah, gave me that kind of boost of like I was telling myself that I could do this before, but maybe I didn't quite believe it, but now I know, and I am doing it. But yeah, I don't know. It's different for everybody, isn't it? With back-to-back labour. So for some women, they might think that when things shift, there is, a kind of build up. But also for some women, their babies turn around. So I know that I've been at births where it definitely seemed like back-to-back labour. The woman was very lucid, and surges were sporadic. There was no kind of rhythm to anything. The energy in the space, the things that were physically going on in her body, and then like that, it just shifted, and it was like a more normal labour, and she was able to rest and sleep throughout the surges and in between, and they were clearly getting closer together and more intense, and that so yeah, that was very different for her compared to my own experience. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that we've. Oh gosh, I'm opening up the dictionary. That we forgot to cover. Yeah, I don't know. I can't see anything on our list of things that we wrote down. Is there anything that's coming to you that you feel called to share?
I guess we've been quite negative about back-to-back labours and births, and I just wonder if there are any positives, or just if we could have more practical words to say on supporting a back-to-back labour.
Yeah, I suppose the opposite of like the negativity of it being long is that sometimes long can be good. Long gives you time to figure out what rhythm you need to kind of get into, what support you need, what practical help that you need. That, if a labour comes on very quickly and intense, and everything's going one thing after the other, that it can be hard to find that space. And sometimes in a back-to-back labour, that can, I think, be a positive of it, that you get to, I'm trying to say, like, be in it with that like more lucid headspace of like, okay, yeah, what do I need? And you kind of, I certainly remember that labour a lot more than my other labour, that one feels like something. I feel like I really went somewhere and came back in that time, and that feels really special in some ways.
That's
Yeah.
really nice to hear.
What practical things have we not mentioned that are on your mind?
I don't know, I just felt like maybe you'd have some.
Yeah.
Let's say you are at birth and the woman is screaming at you or a partner, just like, help me. This is fucking horrible. Just to help me. What do you do?
I don't know whether I've said this already, but we often talk about not engaging with a woman, don't we? This is a time when I would, where it's okay to use words and to be quite repetitive sometimes. That to know that the woman is saying help and you come back with, this is the variation of normal and you're strong and you've got this and I'm here for you. Let's make a plan, like maybe let's try this, or maybe let's go to the pool or get out of the pool. And then the woman's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And things feel okay again. And then it's okay that then that conversation happens in another 20 minutes or half an hour. And to just be, I suppose, comfortable with that need to engage and the kind of repetition. Violet has a question.
Have you experienced quick and smooth back-to-back labour? Possibly. And
Yeah.
I'm not known it.
Yeah, I think when you said before about often you only recognize the back-to-back labour after the fact, when you're looking back and you're going, okay, what went on there? And then you kind of piece it together and you're like, oh yeah, it was that. But yeah, I bet loads of babies are born back to back, and that is right for them and the woman's body, and we just don't know. I remember listening to a podcast, and it was a breech birth, and we hear so much about complications associated with breech birth, and it's harder and negative things. And the only reason why she knew that her baby was breech was that she'd filmed the birth and she saw it afterwards. There was nothing about her labour and birth that made her think that her baby's emergence was anything but completely normal for her. So I think, yeah, absolutely. Quick and smooth back-to-back labours can happen. I've not consciously experienced it, but I don't think your attention is necessarily drawn to the position that the baby's in if everything is going quick and smoothly. Is that fair to say?
Certainly my experience. Look at us winding things down within the hour. Not like it.
Does anyone watching have any other questions? Because I think we're all out of content.
Did you want to say anything about the links that you found earlier?
Yeah, should I? Let me see if I can put the links in the comment. The link. The best, like the one article that we always direct women to is the Midwife Thinking blog post in celebration of the OP baby. And it's just a great resource. I guess it goes back to what you were saying before about education and learning beforehand is so helpful, and it helps you to go into that birth feeling more resourced, well-resourced. Yeah. Some other things on the article that we might not have mentioned. I'll have a quick look.
Did we manage to get through the whole video without actually saying what back-to-back labour, what back-to-back meant?
I think we described it at the beginning.
That's good.
But that article is called "In Celebration of the OP Baby" because the medical terminology of your baby being back to back is that. Then that's what it means. But yeah, definitely have a read through that article if you are worried about having a back-to-back labour, or if you think that your baby might be back-to-back. Because ultimately, the summary of the article is that we need to stop defining OP as a problem or as a malposition, that it is common and it is just a variation, and that if your baby is in that position, it's likely for a very good reason. and that you can trust that. You can trust your body and trust your baby.
If you want to speak to us about having an OP baby, or having had an OP baby, or if you've been told that it's such a medical event that your options are being limited, please do talk to us about that.
Yeah, definitely. Just send us a message on Facebook or an email, and yeah, we'll get back to you with the time when we can speak. So I think that's it. It was fun. I'm sad that Amy's not here.
Next time, what are we talking about next week? Is it next week or in 2 weeks?
If Amy was here, she would know, wouldn't she?
She would. She absolutely would.
Yeah, so our next one is going to be in 2 weeks' time. And it is...
Instead of 8.
Pardon?
Maybe it's 7 instead of 8.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be talking about why Greater Manchester doulas are different from other doulas. So, yeah, that'll be exciting.
Not a lot of other doulas have kittens playing loudly in the background and dogs
Dogs
snoring.
snoring.
I'm so sorry about that. And all of Rosie knocking the camera every couple of minutes, and I was just getting wonkier and wonkier and wonkier because of the other stupid dog.
Taking the rattly ball off them just sent them to doing something else. I've got no clue what they're doing, but they're like running in and out of the room like crazy. So
it's getting for you.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it was awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye.